So we're talking about peer mentoring. I'm Amy Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And with me today is Brittany Boston. Brittany, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Brittany Boston. I'm the associate director with ICSPS. And yeah, that's me.
Okay. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about an introduction to peer mentoring. So really just what it is. It takes a lot of, it takes a lot of different forms, and I'm trying to get your faces in the right place. It takes a lot of different forms and it looks in a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about it as it relates to students. And then that question of, can peer mentoring be used with faculty and your staff and your admin? And surprise, yes, it can. And then some strategy, success, and what's next. So just some things that we want to run through today. And we have worked with peer mentoring in a lot of different ways. And I'm sure you have as well, as we are right now through a learning community. So that's one way that we work, where we network throughout the state. But this we're going to talk about today is really more institutional. So I'm not going to read these all to you, but I am going to highlight a couple little things here. So peer mentoring has been defined as a relationship that is mutually beneficial for all parties. And this is both for students and if you're using this with your administrators or faculty and staff. And it generally is used to help a less experienced person achieve their goal by receiving assistance and guidance from a more experienced person. Peer mentoring aims to enhance supportive relationships between two people sharing knowledge and experience and providing an opportunity to learn from different perspectives. The mentor is to serve as a positive role model, promoting raised aspirations and positive reinforcement, providing open-ended counseling and joint problem solving. And those are my sources down there because I do like to cite sources. But we are seeing this emerge. Do you have peer mentoring for your students on campus? Okay, Highland does, Greg does not. Okay, sorry, Jeff does not. And Anna, welcome. So I see this, I've been intimately involved with this on our high school campus. So we have something called Shift, and the juniors and seniors are Shift mentors to the incoming freshmen. And they meet with them like halfway through their 8th grade year. Because again, it's a direct pipeline. So it's not like individuals coming to your community college, but they meet with them. They serve as their mentor. They have lunch with them a couple times. They show them the ropes. And then throughout the first semester, and less so in the second semester, in my experience, but throughout the first semester, they reach out to those individuals and say, you know, what can I do to help? How's everything going? A lot of times what we're looking at right now in our organization is that we have individuals who are coming in are outnumbering those who are currently. So like our freshman class is bigger than our senior class. So we've dipped into the junior class. And then we also have the mentors are taking on multiple mentees. So still trying to have that relationship, but having multiple mentees. So that's one way to do it on a campus, which has been very successful. And I know, again, like with Highland, there's several community colleges that have that, sometimes related to sport, sometimes in a specific discipline. And at ISU, we also do that for pre-service teachers. So if you get through and are designated as an education major, you traditionally get Brittany, can you remember the name? Because we had somebody present on that before, but the name that they called them, it's not mentor or mentee. It's kind of like a support person is what they like, team support or educational advocate or something like that. Yeah. But anyway, so common characteristics, mentoring may include emotional and psychological support, have an element of role modeling. And I know we do that at both ISU and then also with the high school program that I work with. They do a lot of giving them tips on like, hey, take this class, this particular faculty person wants to be sure you do this, ask a lot of questions, don't ask a lot of questions, you know, things like that. The nice conversations of social media, what to post, what not to post is always helpful for, well, anybody, to be honest. Peer mentoring develops a personal and reciprocal relationship and is built on trust and focused on achievement. And we see this both in our student peer mentors, but also in our team peer mentors. So when you're looking at a team peer mentor, you want to have that idea of trust. And you also want to have that idea of what are we working towards? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's relative to the mentee, and the mentor usually have a greater experience, wisdom, achievement within a specific issue and organization. And this is really when we talk about mentors and mentees for students. You want some upperclassmen helping the younger classmen navigate. At the community college, this can only be an age differentiation of about a year, but also they've had that experience. They've had that freshman year experience. So now they're coming in. And there's a lot to learn from just knowing the ropes. Also, when we talk about mentors and mentees in any capacity, you talk about what that's going to do for your retention rates, because there's so much great retention information that comes out of somebody feeling that they belong. The League of Innovation did a study. They've actually done several studies. The first one was back in 2017, and then they've done 3 or 4 studies since, talking about what are the factors that contribute to student success and student retention. And one of the main factors is the feeling of belonging on campus. And that mentor-mentee relationship really does help with that. So I'm going to pause there because we've got a couple other people who have joined us. So welcome. And are there any questions as we're moving through these slides? Okay, I'll keep going. So mentors can provide a range of services to support students, such as academic support, career guidance, social support, and personal support. And that's one of the things, and I'm going to have Brittany talk a little bit about the learning communities that we do. We literally just got off our CTE learning community, which has a lot of peer mentoring in that idea of how one person's asking a question, and then there's a lot of different topics that we talk about. And then Early School Leaver also has what Brittany has named Community of Practice. So Brittany, do you want to speak to both of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Amy said, we have a post-secondary Perkins learning community and then an Early School Leaver community of practice. And so they're named different things, but they're the same in essence. The different names is really just so I can keep them straight on my calendar and in my head there. But they're designed, they meet quarterly, once a quarter, and it's just those individuals. So I'll use Early School Leaver as an example. Early School Leaver is a program that currently only has 9 of the community colleges running an Early School Leaver program. So a fairly small group, given how big Illinois is. And they have a very specific population of students that they work with. So they work with 16 to 24-year-olds who have stepped out of high school and are coming back to get their Illinois high school diploma. And so they're designed, I help facilitate them, I help pick the dates, but they're really designed off of topics and issues that the programs are facing, whether it's specific to students or program design, recruitment and retention. We've had presentations done. So we've done it in a couple of different ways. Sometimes it's just, hey, here's the topic that you said you'd like to discuss. And so let's come on, let's have a conversation. I can provide feedback, but also programs who are actually out in the field doing the work can help provide feedback and troubleshoot with you as well. We've done where we've actually brought in speakers who are experts in that content area and can share their knowledge base and their information with them. And so the things that I love about them is that you really can design them and develop them to fit the needs of either your institution or your community. The same goes for the post-secondary Perkins group as well. They have very specific issues that are specific to them as far as Perkins dollars and how those can be spent, etc. And so it really is designed. You do kind of need that individual who can facilitate and coordinate and organize everything, but they're very much designed around the individuals participating and their needs. And it's a great way to, Amy and I provide professional development. ICCB provides a lot of the guidance and policy, but you all are the ones actually out there doing the work. And so it's, I hope, beneficial to hear from both IGSPS and ICCB, but I always say it's the most beneficial to hear from the other program and to say, hey, I have this pain point, do you? And let's kind of troubleshoot and see what we can do. And that's really the overarching concept of these learning communities.
Well, and I wanted you to hear that because that's a state example. So we're looking at peer mentoring across the state. And then you can drill that down to possibly your department or looking at it as an institution issue. So we have clean energy as a focus for, all kinds of funding right now. How are we going to come in together as a unit, as an institution, as a unit around clean energy curriculum? Or you can look at it as, we have homelessness. So if you're not aware, we're doing a huge summit on the house Act and the homelessness and serving homelessness at community colleges, and you have house liaisons, so we can focus on it that way. But you could do like a peer cohort there for your administration. Taking us back to students, though, you're really looking at a mentor-mentee relationship, but you can have that same cohort. So one of the things that we've seen being very effective is those of you who have sport teams, which a lot of the community colleges have right now. So looking at how sports team, all the baseball players have a cohort and they have a mentor, and the upperclassmen mentor the underclassmen, or they have a cohort around Spanish majors or English majors, or those transferring to a predominant institution. So for example, Heartland is right adjacent to ISU. So there's a cohort of individuals at Heartland and what they need, how they're coming together, things of that nature. But the idea is that academic support. So if you're looking at a single situation where a mentor mentee, you want to help with study skills. If you're looking at incoming freshmen coming into your institution, those are those big things that are going to be a success point for them. Study skills, time management, and understanding course material. Because one of the biggest challenges when we have students coming into our institutions is they come from high schools where a lot of times they really knew what they were doing. They had it going on, they had it all figured out. And then they come into the college setting and it's different. And it's different good, and it's different challenging. So how do we help the students navigate that? And peer mentoring is a great way to do that. There's a guidance relationship, allowing them to have career paths, internships, things of that nature. Social support. Mentors may be helpful to feel connected to the college and the community. And that's what goes back to that League of Innovation study, making them feel that they belong at your institution. And then personal support. They can offer guidance to personal issues such as managing stress, dealing with family and relationships, problems, finding resources. I want to say that I had Brittany talk at that point intentionally, because all of these things, well, possibly not the academic support, but all of these things were things that we covered as we went through the pandemic within our learning communities, statewide learning communities. All of these things are things that we all had to tackle together as a state, and you had to tackle together as institutions. So social support, personal support, managing time, stress, mental health, all of those things are very important. So peer mentors can be used for all of that. A little Illinois example, and I know we've given quite a few, but there is the Association of Colleges in Illinois, and they tout how wonderful their peer mentoring program is. So if you wanted to look at that, you can look them up. They match freshman students with trained peer mentor recruits from the sophomore, junior, and senior classes who face similar challenges. And they're really looking at students who have barriers to success. So our economically disadvantaged, our first generation students, they have 156 students that are served, 130 mentors and 130 mentees and 26 mentors. And some of those colleges are, I mean, all of them are in Illinois. So you're looking at Millikan, Monmouth, Illinois College, Eureka College, Blackburn College, all of those have a peer mentoring program that if you had questions, it's a nice place to start if you haven't got one started already. So tips for having a program. One of the things that has come out of a lot of different sites say this, so I didn't cite this source because I saw it pretty much everywhere. Have rules and guidelines. Train your mentors to be mentors. Don't just, be like, hey, Mac, you want to be a mentor? We're starting next week. That doesn't work as well. You're not going to have success. So you want to have rules and guidelines that need to be ensured to ensure success. You want to have parameters on what are those things that they talk about or give guidance on. There is that idea. I mean, you all are in that ethics training that we take every year and right to disclosure training. You need to decide as an institution what your peer mentors can provide guidance on and what they can't. So for example, as a state employee, all of you are in this position. If someone comes and talks to you about child abuse or sexual assault, you are a mandated reporter. Now, in a lot of cases, the peer mentors don't fall to that mandated reporter, but that's something that you want to articulate out to your mentors and mentees. What is the action if if they bring up something that could lead to legal action? What is the confidentiality? All of those things. And I know I just took it in a whole different from woohoo scholar, yay, we're talking about social, hugs, but now we're talking about really what can be talked about. Define the purpose and the goals of the program. And that's not only so you get good mentors, but also so you get mentees that know what they're getting into. And this is both for students and those faculty and staff, but really for when I'm talking about students here, again, like if the goal of the sports mentor-mentee program is to make sure they make it through academically and are successful playing sports, there's a lot of stress that goes in there. There's a lot of mental health focus that needs to be part of that mentor-mentee relationship. How did they handle that? We are much more receptive and embracing of mental health. I think the Simone Biles case on the Olympics really highlighted that athletes do have a lot of stress there. And I think that's good. So now, what is the purpose? What is the goal of the program? Create a structure for how the program will work and who will be matched with whom and how often will they meet. One of the things that you're going to hear me say here is one of the key successes is scheduled meetings and consistent meetings, and not just meeting once and then following up when I feel like it or when you feel like it, but having a set time to come together. And then who's matched with whom? A lot of programs match on similar background. Some programs match on gender. One of the things that if you've heard me speak in the gender equity space, I will tell you that a good mentor is a good mentor across the board, but a good mentor who is of the same gender has a larger success of resonating with the young lady going into like a trades organization or going into something that's non-traditional for their gender. So men going into nursing, being mentored by men who are already nurses, is going to have a larger impact on that student and their student's ability to retain. Same with women going into the skilled trades or going into IT, being mentored by a woman who has gone through that, just because they will have more shared experiences. Decide what kind of support your institution will give the mentees and mentors. Are you going to offer financial support? Are you going to give them time off? Are you going to give them places and spaces to meet? Is it going to be a structured cohort schedule where you have one mentor and 3 or 4 mentees? Or is it going to be a one-on-one mentor-mentee schedule? There's a lot. I mean, really, you get to be creative in this and think of what's going to work best for you. And then plan out how long the program will run, and when it will be evaluated. So for example, with the freshman orientation program for the high school that I work with, they come in, they start February of their 8th grade year, and they go through their freshman year. So at the end of the freshman year, most of the time the mentor is graduating, so seniors are gone, and the mentee is then stepping into that role without the additional support. And then, sorry, my mouse went over to my other screen. Downside of too many screens. So some activities that you can look at, if you're looking at those general learning communities, or if you're looking at, again, making sure it's around topic, a lunch and learn. I'm sure you do these on campus. I know ISU does a ton of these. Like, we're going to talk about the DEIA on campus. So how do we talk about that? We're going to come together for a lunch and learn. Brown bag discussion, you bring your own, BYOL, bring your own lunch. Question prompts. That's great when you have incoming freshmen coming in and they're being mentored by individuals who are more experienced. Give the incoming freshmen questions that they can ask, because they're not going to be thinking about the questions that they're going to need to ask. Like, where do I find this? Where would I go for this? Those are things that are also very helpful. Show and tell. That is a nice getting to know you activity, but it also talks about what you can talk about within the show and tell. What are those things that tell a little bit about yourself? And then set SMART career goals. So if you're looking at that mentor-mentee relationship, what are the goals? Again, graduation is always our goal, but I had a wonderful speaker, I think that was last week, tell us that, it doesn't matter what your purpose is and your goals are, it matters what their purposes and their goals are. And you cannot determine someone else's motivation for doing what they do. You can help them, you can guide them, but you cannot determine it, and free will's a real thing. So set those SMART career goals. What's attainable, what's measurable, and what's timely. And again, when you're coming into a community college, you're not looking to be there for 6 or 8 years, right? We're hoping not, right? We're wanting to move them through. Some of you are like, we've got students that have been here, and that's okay. I'm not saying that's bad, but looking at what are the time constraints of your program and of your goals for your students. Make a list of things you want to do or accomplishments you want to do during your lifetime and share them. That's a great way to start a conversation, especially when you're talking with young people coming in from just graduating high school. Where do you want to be in 5 years? It's a little different when you're talking to 40-somethings that are saying, okay, 4 or 5 years, that's 45. The jumps aren't quite as big. As the older you get, usually the jumps are a little bit smaller. What's your plan? How are you going to tackle this situation? Ice-breaking questions with a deck of cards. There's all kinds of icebreakers. You can go online. And then, a whole quadrant of ice-breaking questions. One of them that I really like, just because you're having to listen to me right now, is ask a person's middle name and then have them explain why they have that middle name. because a lot of times a middle name is attached to something with, there's always a story. Or why were you named Brittany? What's this significance of your name? So things like that. Other tips for success, and these are more towards your team, more toward your faculty associations, faculty, staff, and administrators. We don't want it to be associated with a hierarchy of position. So you don't want to menteeing somebody who has a lot of power and control over someone else. You want it to be possibly someone from a different department, a way to grow within your institution, yet not have it be the boss mentoring, Mac mentoring me. So if I report up to Mackenzie and Mackenzie controls all my evaluations, is it going to be the same relationship as it would be if I'm mentoring somebody who is more of a colleague? So peer mentorship is that idea of allowing you to see from a different space and not necessarily have it be that direct report. Balanced communication and a balanced relationship is very important. And then also peer mentoring can offer great opportunities for empathy and a sense of equity and expertise. And Britt, you look like you needed to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, especially when it comes to tips for success, which Amy, I think you might touch on this later on, is patience. So full transparency, when we were putting together this topic, I had reached out to a handful of community colleges who we knew in years past had some solid, strong peer mentoring programs in place. And when I reached out to them, a plethora of issues, one mainly being COVID and the pandemic. And so they kind of fell apart and they're trying to build them back up, and they're just not getting the same response as they used to. And so it takes time, it takes patience, consistency, especially with, well, not even especially, with both students and, faculty and staff. You may not get a great turnout at that first, second, maybe even third meeting, but being consistent and keeping the schedule going, and especially if it's around a topic that may have a bit of a stigma. Amy had mentioned, individuals who experience homelessness. Maybe don't call the mentor group that, but there are topics, single parents, that can have, some stigma attached. And so students may not be jumping at the bait right away to go and sit and talk about that and share their personal history with whatever it may be. But just, being consistent, getting the information out there, making sure you're promoting and marketing these peer mentor groups, and just, it may take you a year, 2 years or so before you actually, get it solid and set. And speaking from experience with the Perkins and the early school leaver ones, it took a while, and it started during the pandemic. And so we got a good turnout because everybody was kind of in that same state of panic of, well, what do we do now? Everything's moving virtually. Yeah, we'll listen to you if you have ideas and support. We want it. But after we kind of got our bearings and figured things out, the attendance started to trickle a little bit, and topics changed because, needs changed. And so just making sure that, again, you're just not expecting success right off the bat.
Well, and that's one of the challenges when working with peer mentoring for your peers, your level peers versus student peer mentoring. With student peer mentoring, it's really, in my opinion, a little easier to shape a program because those challenges that freshmen are going to face. Those things that individuals need to know when they come to your campus. That's what you all eat, sleep, and breathe, and you can create a program around that to what is going to be successful. What do the mentors need to know? What do the mentees need to know? All of that great stuff. When it comes to mentoring a peer, mentoring another administrator, mentoring another staff member, mentoring faculty, that gets to be a little bit more challenging because you don't necessarily know exactly what the person coming in needs and how that conversation can go or what they're engaged in. So that getting to know you phase is even more important. And that idea of having that shared time and that designated time to allow for just dialogue with the other person. So we talked about this as we went through, but is peer mentoring for faculty, staff, and admin? Yes, absolutely it is. And there's a lot of great ways to do that. So I'm going to shift now at this, again, all of this is applicable to either, but why would you start a peer mentoring program? One would be just that idea of leadership development. This type of mentoring is excellent for developing leadership skills. So if you're wanting, and you've seen that within, we're seeing it at the national level now with advanced CTE, they're having they're calling it a cohort-based professional development. Janelle, who we all know from ICCB, she went through that for CTE, but it's an excellent way. It's a leadership academy, developing leadership skills. A senior member can share their years of experience, knowledge with the junior members. They can look at, what mistakes they made, what key skills they needed to develop, progress quickly and cooperatively up the ladder, what the ladder looks like. Sometimes in some organizations, you have to move sideways to move up. You can't move up. And those are things that you would want to know. So that idea of the development of leadership is really important. Succession planning. So if you have somebody who has been the lead person and that person is looking to retire soon, a mentor program can be great for succession planning, really strategizing who can help have that transfer of the knowledge to the junior member of your team. And then also looking at who's going to take those roles when the time comes. What is going to be allocated, what is going to be delegated, and what also is going to be taking over. So looking at mentoring so people know what's going on. Does anybody have a person in their institution that if they left, you would just all be lost because no one knows exactly what they do, but a lot of things just happen? Yeah, we all do. And so part of that is there's also that idea of sharing the information up. So if that person is like a support staff person, you want someone else to know what they do. And then also if that person is a leadership level person, we want to know what that person does. So I try very hard on my team to make sure that there's no job that only one person can do. And sometimes that works, and sometimes with staffing shortages, that doesn't work. But for the most part, you want someone else to know what you're working on. And then developing high potential talent. So you have a junior member staff who you share great potential. Mentoring them can help them develop their skills, knowledge that they need to progress in their career. Now, of course, you know that sometimes when you develop a person, they don't stay exactly where you wanted them to stay. That's a whole nother issue. But really, you will be helping. Mentoring does help develop high potential talent. And then I spoke of this a little bit ago, but a reverse mentoring. So the junior member of the staff mentoring the senior member of the staff, it can be just as helpful for the senior member of the staff. Because sometimes you have new technology, for example, you can help them understand the new technology. We did a lot of conversations when the millennials entered our workforce on understanding millennial mindset. Remember that? Did anybody live through that, or any of you millennials who got talked about as a whole just group of individuals? That's something that did happen. So that idea of reverse mentoring, how do I help the leadership understand the value of the junior team members? And then when do you start? So there's a lot of opportunities to start peer mentoring. One would be when the employee is new. When they just joined the organization, they prepared with a peer mentor to help them settle and feel comfortable and navigate. That is really common practice, and I'm guessing most of your institutions do have that. I know we have that. This is going to be your mentor for the year, and like they're going to help you as somebody who you can go to ask questions if you don't feel comfortable asking, the big bad director of the center. Peer mentoring shows the new employees around, introduces them to staff, answers those questions, and provides those insights about how the organization works and things of that nature. So the other thing is connecting to a remote team or connecting a remote team member. So we have all three of those. I know I just put one on there, but the idea of you have somebody new, but they're going to be working fully remote. How do we connect with them? Mentoring is a great way to bring them in. You have team members who are all working remotely, but you're expecting them to all work together. So how does that work? They can be isolated from the rest of the team. So how do you build camaraderie around developing a culture for your team while you have remote employees? And then really looking at connecting them to other employees, because as looking at a hierarchical structure, they're going to report to often the person who they report up to and the person who they work with, but maybe their mentor is somebody from another team, or maybe their mentor is from someone from another division. So they understand all the workings of your institution, which can be very beneficial. And then accountability. So working on projects together, peer mentors can help track accountability, keep them accountable for where they are. They can divide and delegate and conquer things, which also is very helpful. So looking at that balance, we have this whole thing to do. who can do what, and then you have that mentor situation where you're all working together towards that goal. And then collaborative learning, which is one of my favorite topics, but they can really help employees learn from each other and share knowledge, and allowing that idea of, if you want to, so for example, if I really want to know something about, if someone comes onto my team and they're like, oh, who should I ask about the special populations, anyway, super strategies that we developed. Oh, go to Brittany. Brittany developed those. She's, put her blood, sweat, and tears into those. She'd be who you need to go to. But we also have a lot of things that happen in institutions that like this much when you come in, and there's all this to learn. So a peer mentor will help with that. Just knowledge of the institution and institutional knowledge being shared then leads to a growth there. And then networking. Again, that's an easy one. Build your professional network. They can introduce them to other professionals, provide advice, networking, all of that great stuff that they can do for one another. So some tips for success when you're talking about developing a mentor program, whether that be peer or for students, focus on developing. This is actually for the mentor part. A good mentor needs to focus on developing a relationship through trust and respect. So that is something that you wanted. I mean, if you have student mentors or if you have peer mentors, you want to talk about that as well. Coach their mentee by sharing experience and perspective. By the way, someone helps is by sharing their own experiences. There can be good and bad to that. So you want to make sure your mentors are coached on, we don't have to share all the dirty laundry from 20 years ago, but at the same time, what are those things that will help them be a better person? Different perspectives, find guidance, all of that good stuff. Offer acceptance and constructive actual feedback. That is something that we talk a lot about. It's growth mindset and understanding growth mindset, and you're going to get feedback. So allowing the peer mentor is able to give and take feedback constructively, and this back and forth will really help with growth for your organization. But that idea of constructive, actionable feedback, I know some organizations in the business world like to call this a carefrontation. I care about you, so I'm confronting you on this issue. That's used quite a bit in quite a few businesses I've worked with, but the carefrontation is kind of like that idea of the peer mentor on steroids. I'm going to come together with not only your supervisor, but also your mentor and the other people who you work with and say, this is an issue and how do we address this issue? A good mentor encourages and challenges their mentee to step out of their comfort zone. So what are things that you want? Where do they want to grow and how can you help them grow in that ways? Or what do you see as skills that they have? Sorry, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Can we cut that out of the recording? What are skills that you see them developing that they could really blossom? And then how do you help them develop those skills? And then this is back to Brittany's point, be patient, consistent, and reliable. So a good peer mentor is someone who is patient enough to listen to their mentee about their events from day to day. Also is somebody who is going to give them consistent and reliable feedback. Meet with them consistently. That's part of that consistent part. So like be patient with them, listen, be consistent with them, set up times to meet, and then be somebody who they reliably can go to. There was a saying, a little thing that fell across my desk the other day, that be careful who you vent to because all rooms have vents. And it was one of those things that you have to be aware of who you're talking to and making sure that when you're talking, or having that trust that when you're talking to somebody that it's shared in confidence. Because I don't know about you, but there's been times that I've vented about things that I really don't want everyone else to hear, whether that be about my husband, my sisters, or my coworkers. So you want to be sure that the opportunity to dialogue is rich and supported. Anybody want to add anything there? Okay. So why is it important? It really does foster a sense of community, and this is both for students and your employees. You're going to have an increased sense of community. You're going to have an idea of what the community is. Again, back with students, fostering that idea of belonging, having students have identity with your organization is going to be very beneficial to you and your organization. It encourages professional development. So just allowing the person to grow professionally is very important. Helps with retention, both staff and students. If you have a peer mentor, you have relationships with that institution, it's going to help your retention levels. And then provides support during change. We are all coming out of a pandemic. I believe the governor has said that the Illinois it's done as of May 15th, the pandemic is over. So March 15th or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, pandemic's over, so we're all good to go. But there's been a lot of change over the last few years. There's been a lot of change due to COVID. There's been a lot of change due to a lot of things. And now this fluctuation is not going to change. We know that. If there's one thing constant, it is that there is change. So having a peer mentor program for our students and having a peer mentor program for our employees will really support all of them during change. And then that last one I feel is so very important. It really encourages open communication, allowing to have that trust relationship between employees. Mentees feel comfortable asking for help and advice. Mentors can give feedback without feeling like they're being judged. That open line of communication is so very helpful. So that's my slides. What questions do you have at this time? This is Brittany and I's information if you have any want to reach out. So by show of virtual hands or real hands, how many of you do have a student mentor program, peer mentoring for students? So Heather, do you have any tips for everybody? I'm going to start.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm actually new to my position. I started the end of November, and so new to this. However, I come out of 6 years of management with staff that I had in a mental health facility. So looking to transition into some of that. One of the things we have on campus is we really utilize referrals from different departments for individuals who could be our mentors. So that has been a benefit with being a community college and then moving through pretty quickly. So that has been a great area. It's also a newer program for us just in general. It started, I think, last summer really for us. And so just trying to find those different ways to improve upon. And the one kind of what you talked about with the high school students, what I'm trying to implement this summer is that connection to those new freshmen coming in to help ease some of that before they even get on campus. So any and all ideas I'm open to if anybody has them.
So I know that I know U of I has a program in their mentoring mentee that they do virtual mentors as they come in. So depending on the program, and this is specifically with the College of ACEs at U of I, so the ag college, incoming freshmen get assigned a mentor and then they help guide them through the process, because there's a lot of things when they come to college their parents are not going to be able to help them with. And so how do they navigate all of that, especially if they're farther away from home? And at our community colleges, we're not isolated from that. A lot of times we do have students who are, live within the community. And a lot of times we have students who are not right, their parents aren't right next door, or their support system. I don't even want to say parents, their support system is not right next door. So how do we help them navigate that? The virtual peer mentoring, there's been a lot of success with that because students do chat on their phones. They do text, they do have those things. I know even, and I think it was U of I, they were allowing them to interview and meet roommates online. So, you're going to stay there. So here's the roommate pool. Who do you think you meet best with? ISU does have a mentoring program for incoming freshmen. Again, they have some fantastic name for it. But looking at those are more specific to the different colleges. So the College of Business has one, the College of Education I know has one, and looking at how you're helping guide them through their next, few years at that institution. I do really like the idea of somebody mentoring from a 4-year to a 2-year, saying, also that's awesome for recruitment, but looking at those where you have those great articulation agreements where someone's sitting in Carbondale who's recruiting to SIUC and recruit from Logan, and they're going to come into different programs. But yeah, a lot of times you have them for a short time. And a lot of times it's so important that you make those connections early on. So then they have that wonderful experience. They have that sense of belonging. They have that idea of how to navigate your system. And then they stay and complete. And that's what we all want, is them to do well and complete.
Absolutely. And I can add to my previous employer, I was in a program for mentee and then was a mentor, and it was huge on my leadership development, my retention at that time of staying within them, and being able to give back when I stepped onto the other side to get to mentor. And yeah, there was a lot of growth, and all the things you talked about is exactly what I experienced, and it was wonderful.
Excellent. So show of hands, how many of you have a professional, I'll say it that way, the, employee, mentor, mentee? Anna, you had your hand up.
Mine wasn't about a professional mentor mentee, so do you want to go ahead with that
No,
first?
we can go back to that one. Do you have a
Okay.
question?
Okay. Yeah, my question is, we're in the very early stages of looking at having some kind of a mentorship program for our non-traditional students. Trying to figure out what that would look like. We're kind of looking at it almost like a two-prong approach, trying to reach out to organizations maybe in the community that might serve non-traditional folks, like maybe males in allied health or females in IT, something like that. Finding those organizations and seeing if they would be willing to mentor some of our non-traditional students, but then also trying to grow our own, right? As we make contact with the students who are non-traditional by gender, and trying to get them the support maybe from external organizations, but also then hoping they will turn around and be willing to mentor other first-year students, or maybe even after they leave Rock Valley, maybe they would be willing to continue to offer, a voice of experience. So I didn't know if anyone had any thoughts on that. Like I said, very early stages. This is the non-traditional special pops work group that has come up with this idea. So we're just trying to see what that might look like.
I'll open the floor. Any advice, any suggestions? So I will say, definitely think about the aspects of structuring the program. When does it start? When does it end? Look at it around what are some of those challenges that the individuals are going to face. And then having it by program is very effective when you're talking about non-traditional occupations for gender. Also having the mentors be of the same gender as the mentees, specifically for non-traditional occupations. So in an area where men are going into nursing, having them mentored by somebody who is the same gender as them. Also, don't be afraid to ask your former students who have exited your program to mentor your current students that are in your program. Because your tenure with them is so short, it is very beneficial to have somebody that says, oh yeah, I was there 2 years ago and I did this, this, and this, and this is where I've moved through. And that would be another way to increase your pool of mentors to support your mentees. And then if you can't do the one-on-one, don't be afraid to do the cohort model, because there's a lot of great cohort mentors that are out there where they have a set time that they meet and they discuss that around their own schedule. But then you allow them to have that conversation of what challenges are you facing? What successes are you facing? How are you overcoming this? How did you handle this situation? Which is just a great way to have dialogue. And then finally, trust your mentors, train your mentors, but then trust your mentors to have that relationship, because Big Brother inserting himself too much can be detrimental. But trust your mentors to come back and share with you if there is, a situation where administration needs to be involved. There's my tips.
Thank you.
And I think too, and this can go for all of the mentoring groups, but especially if you're looking at including individuals who are already employed and in the field, really utilizing the virtual format. There's something to be said about meeting face to face and being able to have that space to bring everybody together. But if you're looking at, and Amy and I always talk about how important it is, especially for those individuals going into non-traditional fields, to hear from someone who has done that and is currently working in that field. But they also probably at this point have a full-time job and have a very busy schedule. And so a lot of times doing it virtually can make it easier for them to say, yes, I'd absolutely be able to do that, because that cuts down on travel time and they can do it in their own home if that's more convenient for them. So looking at that virtual format as well.
It also makes your pool so much broader. If you're just looking at who is in the Rock Valley district or who has ever been to Rock Valley, those are different numbers. So it broadens your pool quite a bit.
Or current students, right? Is that really, that also really narrows it down. And that was part of what I wondered too, is we have an organization that's just starting called, I'm gonna mess it up, but it's something like Tradeswomen United of Northern Illinois, something like that. But, it's not a one-to-one correspondence to maybe our students who might be non-traditional. They might not be going into those particular trades. Do you think there's still value in having a mentor relationship with somebody who has been non-traditional in their field, even if it isn't the same field?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I
that was
also
my feeling too.
would say tradesmen, they didn't want to open that up to trade person.
It's specifically just for women. It's just for women in the trades. I think it's kind of like a peer support group for
No, but it's
women
called
who are in the
tradesmen?
trades. What's
So
that?
but it's called tradesmen.
No, tradeswomen. It's,
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's,
I'm sorry, I
I
missed that.
think
Oh,
it's, like I said, I'm going to bungle the title, but I think it's Tradeswomen United of
And
Northern Illinois.
yeah, there is, and then Chicago Women in Trades is another group that is all specifically women in the trades, and they do have a mentoring program that we were part of, pre-pandemic and before children, so at least 14 years ago, that we were involved in, that allowed women in any trade to, because again, they have that shared experience. They have those barriers, the things, the ways you overcome those is so very important. So I think, yes, very beneficial, Anna. All good things.
Okay,
And
thanks
now
for the
Brittany,
advice.
next year, make note, Highland, Heather, Anna, Rock Valley. We want to talk about, check back in, see how everybody's doing. And then what about the at work? I know Heather, you said you got to experience the employer level or the employee level mentor mentee. Has anybody else experienced that with the peer learning? When you were hired, were you just thrown off the deep end? Yeah, okay.
At a previous institution, we did peer mentorship. So not at my current one, but and it was good. We went we're kind of matched up with somebody with a bit more seniority, but they were very intentional outside of kind of the job responsibilities, so that it was more, I'd say, like institutional mentorship, and it was good because there was a larger institution, and so there was a lot to navigate.
Very nice. So I'm hearing, right, again, you're both Jeffrey and Heather said good things about the peer mentoring for employees. So if you don't have that, look into that. That'd be something fantastic. I know we do that on our team. We're actually going to shuffle our peer mentors because we had 2 new employees start last year. So they're at their 1-year anniversary and they've both been assigned mentors. And so now we're a very small team. We're 7 people, but we're going to shuffle the mentoring to make sure people know the other people and the work, really the workload, because that's something that's unique to your institution as well. I know what Brittany does, but does Brittany know everything that Mackenzie does? And so we're going to shift that around. And no, Mackenzie is not on my team, but I used her as an example. Any other questions for today? So I do want to let you know, we are getting together next week again, and I'm going to move you guys over here so I can look at this. So next week is the final session of the, sorry, I want to look at you and not have you looking up my nose, which is one of the benefits here, is the final session of the food insecurity. So if you have not heard those, they are all available on the Learning Renewal website. They're all recorded, everything's up there. But the final one is really that follow-up and Q&A. So if you have questions, bring those for Clancy. She is very, very passionate about her work. And I do think that's one of those ways that when you're talking about a peer mentor for students, that's one of the barriers that they face is if they are homeless, if they are hungry, if they are individuals who are coming out of foster care. Those are things that they might not say in a larger group, but they might say in a personalized group, in a very small group, or a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-1. And then they would be able to find out, like, where do we park? That was one of the best practices that we talked about during the poverty simulation, is having campuses that have designated parking lots. So kids who are living in their cars have a safe space to park, and then making showers accessible the next morning. So people can go in and take showers at least once a day at the institutions. Ways in which our community can help our community colleges can help our community. But if you haven't heard those, please tune in. That'd be fantastic. And then I am trying to, and then the House Summit is June 29th. So if you have an institution that has homeless individuals or students who are experiencing homelessness, June 29th at the Alumni Center. All 48 community colleges are welcome to attend, so Brittany, can we post that or throw that in the chat? What I'm wondering is, do we have a final quarterly? We don't have a final quarterly reflection time, correct? For learning renewal? I don't believe so. Anyway, I do want to say that there's another thing coming down the pike. You're going to have, it's a virtual learning series, a 4-part series on DEIA and an introduction to, that you then can morph and use any way you want. And that will be shared hopefully before the end of the month, regarding what is, sorry, Siri's talking to me, but regarding how to start those conversations and have those conversations. And so individuals at your institution can go through that independently, or you can go through that as a cohort, or you can go through that in any way you want. And then we will be having statewide learning circles around DEIA as well. And that's going to move into the next fiscal year, just because we'll be facilitating those, but those are some fun things to be looking forward to on that conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion and access. And then the House Summit registrations in the chat. It is free. Free lunch. You have to drive for it, so it's really not free, but it's a free lunch time. So, any other questions, comments, random topics you want to talk about? Gesundheit. I'm noticing it spread. I sneeze and Brittany sneezed, now Mackenzie sneezed, the rest of you. So, all right. Well, with that, then I'll give you 5 minutes back to your day, right? Are we supposed to go to? Oh no, we have you till 12. I'm giving you 35 minutes. So have a great rest of your day. Have a wonderful summer. If you do ever have any questions, do reach out. ICSPS is always here to help, and we support the community colleges in a broad array of ways, and we'll be happy to help you with professional development. Brittany, I'm sorry, Mackenzie, anything for the community college system you want to?
No, not really. This is my first one, so I just appreciate the work everybody's doing.
Well, thank you all for your time today, and I won't tell anybody that we got done early.